Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Terrace Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, and on this occasion I am joined by Tony Anderson.
Craig Fowler. Hey, how are them?
Yeah, not too bad. Bit sleepy after the weekend, but I'm fine. It's not the worst Mondays. It's not the worst of Mondays.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine. No, I think I'm fine. I've maybe underestimated that I need to put my heating on in my house. I'm a bit cold just now with this very thin shirt on, but I have got a vest on. So I've moved back into vest world, as you can see here. And I think people should copy that. Your mum is right when you're a child. You should wear a vest underneath when the winter months comes. It's what a difference it makes. What a difference it makes.
I've got the hoodie on. I've got the thick socks on. I'm still wearing my trainers. I just came back for the house to pick up a prescription, and I was just like, I'm keeping my trainers on for this because I've turned the heating off while we're doing this because there's a radiator right beside me.
Make a noise.
It's get very, very warm.
Oh yeah.
It's not so much a noise. It'll be too
like
warm right beside me. So
by the end of it, fucking sweating on this fucking YouTube call, minging.
So yeah, I don't want to be like that. So I think I'll put it off for now, and then the house is warm enough now. So by the time we get to an hour's time, it'll cool down, and then I can turn it back on again when I don't have to sit in this position in the house.
Bloody hell! Who's listening to the man on the big bucks here? Jesus.
I suppose what I could do is just turn the radiator down beside me. That would have made a lot of sense, but that's
no. I think it's good.
It's too late. I've committed now.
No worries. And talk about committing, Fowler. We're about to talk about people who haven't committed, even.
That's a very good link. I wish I'd thought of that one myself. So yeah, we're doing something a little bit different on this Monday because the Scotland match is taking place tonight, and nobody, least of all me, wants to be working until well after midnight because the game will finish at like
10.
I don't know what time's kick-off.
Quarter to 8. 10.
Aye, finish about 10. By the time we've done a podcast, by the time we've edited that podcast, then you're talking into like 1 a.m. territory. So no thank you at all. But there will be a discussion on the match in Poland that will be coming up on. It'll be on our YouTube channel for those who like to watch. It'll also be the audio will be available on our Patreon subscription at the lowest tier, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. That's just on the £2 a month tier. If you're one of these people who is not so big on watching and wants to listen instead. Wants to have it in your ears as you're going about your commute or your exercise or whatever you like to do when you listen to the podcast. So that's the plan. So for this podcast, going to be something different, and we're going to, as usual, when it's a Monday show, going to be talking about the Scottish Premiership. Of course, no games this last weekend. What would there be in an international break? Whoever thought this was a good time, we're getting into mid-November to have a look at the players who are out of contract at the end of the season and pick our most interesting ones from each and every top flight team. So we'll just do as we usually do with podcasts like this and go in alphabetical order. And Tony, who have you got from Aberdeen?
And as always, thank you, Nary's Toe Poker.
Yes, aye.
Without this, I simply would just say I'm not doing the podcast. So thank you very much for doing it, because the work that would go into this all of a sudden would be treacherous. So yes, thank you for all the years I have abused this website to do this exact podcast. Aberdeen, I thought there was 3 interesting ones, Fowler. 3 interesting ones. Duke being an obvious one, but I think we'll leave Duke because we just know he won't sign a new deal and he'll leave. No. So I think that's a very simple discussion. But I think we could cover the 2 players here, Fowler, Jay McGrath and Jack McKenzie. I think because they're 2 first-team players, both who are pretty much playing on the same side at points. And they've been very important to the team this season, even though they both players that maybe carried slight bits of doubt going into it. Would that be a fair assessment?
I'm not sure about that. I think Aberdeen fans were pretty happy with both of them last season. I think they were 2 of the Aberdeen players that did have a bit more credit in the bank going in from last campaign. McGrath was an interesting one. I mean, I was going to say he had these doubters. I think everybody in Aberdeen had their doubters due to the season they had. Miofsky was the only buddy that did have a single doubter in the entire support. But he was very much somebody that was one of their better players at the top end of the park. Goals or assists. I know there was a kind of theory that Ewan had that was certainly shared by an Aberdeen listener of ours on, it was either on social media or like in terms of meaning like Twitter or Discord, he was saying he felt the same, that, well, McGrath's numbers were good. Didn't feel like necessarily the midfield played at his best with him in it, and maybe like his kind of different style maybe took something away from it. McKenzie, I think stock was quite high on him, but that was, I think a lot of it was due to the fact that he was decent throughout the campaign, even when they were struggling. Apart from after they send it off against Hibs in that semi, that seemed to, I don't know if that seemed to galvanise him or like just give him a bit of a wake-up call, but he's certainly pulled it back since then. Towards the end of the campaign, even under the Warnock tenure where things were terrible, he was one of the better players, and he ended the campaign very well. He's going up a step this season, but there was still, like I said, there was still two players coming in with credit in the bank. I've personally gone for McGrath. I've just got more of a feeling that McKenzie might be away. He was very non-committal when asked on it recently.
Right, okay, I didn't see that. I didn't see that at all. So what did he say?
I don't have the quotes in front of me, so I can't tell you word for word, but it was along the lines of, we'll just see what's going to happen kind of thing. And his form's been excellent this campaign, and he's really young.
How young is he? Young. How old is Jack McKenzie?
He's actually not really young. He's younger than I don't know why. Has he
been around for fucking ages? Because that was wrong. He's not really young. You think he's really young, but he's not. He's 24. As soon as I said that, I was like, hang on, he's not really young at all. Really young's like 18. Because Jack McKenzie, I was building up the vibes with McKenzie that he was going to be the new Lewis Stevenson, even in the same position of the vibe of being quite good, being handy, and becoming like a one-club man, but due to there being certain things lacking in his game, that he might never make that step up. And he's already at one of the biggest clubs in Scotland, in the league that he plays in. I still think there's a chance of that. I think we could live in a world where McKenzie does sign a new deal, especially if Aberdeen finish second and they're possibly going on a Champions League jaunt, if that's still a thing into next season. I think guys like Jack McKenzie might be thinking, I don't know if I'll ever get to play at that level. I might hang around for a couple of years.
Well, it's not going to be a Champions League jaunt though, is it? It's going to be a couple of qualifiers and then they're papped out.
And then they're guaranteed what, the Europa League? Would they drop into that?
I think it's actually even less likely that he stays if Aberdeen continue the form for the rest of the campaign.
Because he'll have to be so good, he'll get a move.
There'll be a lot of interest around him. He's already been called up to a Scotland squad recently. Like I say, he's 24. This is the prime age to
make the move,
to see how much money you can make in your career. Because if he signs at Aberdeen now, he's going to take him up to he's about 27, and then you're really kind of playing about with how much is another team going to want me when I'm already in my, quote unquote prime years as a footballer. I think I would be surprised if he was being advised to do anything else other than try to move by his agent.
So it's one of those, is that interesting sort of sliding doors? Because I think Lewis Stevenson also went through this exact thing as a younger player, because he obviously did have, and he could play multiple positions. He looked like he'd be handy, and he was good at certain parts of his age. So maybe you're right. It's the happens now or never happens. This is the summer where Jack McKenzie's either Mr. Aberdeen for life, or he actually makes a few quid.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to bother doing another job in the future.
So to me, and I'll do this quickly because we need to basically spend about 5 minutes per team on this podcast. Jamie McGrath having a terrific season. He's best at the top flight level so far. He's got some, and that's with some decent other campaigns under his belt. But he's 28 years old. He's tried England before. It didn't work out. I can't imagine his stock will be too high. The main thing that makes it interesting for me, because I think McGrath will stick around. I think he'll accept what Aberdeen have to offer him. But just what gives me cause for pause is the fact that we are in mid-November already, and that deal hasn't been done yet. And he's not, even though we kind of, at this point, almost think of him as Scottish, because he's played so much of his career and certainly so much of his best football. He's not Scottish, so he doesn't necessarily have much ties. So if he just wants to try it one more time in England, unlike Scottish players in the same position of having gone down, not managed to make a success of yourself, gone, okay, I tried that, I'll just stick with the home comforts. That's not going to apply to McGrath as much.
But McGrath as well is like, I said this on a pod with Rob that I'd done. and recently when we were just doing the Monday review, it's like more respect needs to be put on McGrath's name. I think we've hit that stage, and he's now looking like he's such a good player, both in output, which was always his thing when he was at maybe Dundee United, even though it was like pens, he was a bit of a pay me prath. But it's like now he's tactically aware enough and plays in a way that he can play off the flank. He can play in like sort of more diamond day or box midfields. He knows when to move into the wide players to give his fullback options. You know, there's a lot to him on top of the obvious set pieces, goals, assists. He's starting to become a player that he makes himself useful no matter how the team played. Whereas previously, you felt like a midfield had to kind of be built around his deficiencies. He was one of those players, and I don't think it's really like that anymore. And no matter what scenario he's really used in at Aberdeen, he's coming up with he looks like he should be in the team.
Right, let's move on to Celtic. Who have you got for Celtic?
I thought there was the obvious one would have been Greg Taylor, man.
Yeah, aye. There's not a lot of option. That's exactly who I've got here. 27 years old. If he's ever going to, kind of similar to what we're talking about there with McKenzie, if he does sign another deal at Aberdeen, it does kind of limit his options in the future. Greg Taylor's at that kind of later career crossroads now, 27. If he's ever going to leave Scottish football, then this would have to be the time, really, you would think. If he's going to get a big kind of contract that makes it worthwhile to leave Celtic, certainly. He's rarely ever been looked upon as part of one of Celtic's best, but I still think there'd be a great deal of interest. Italy, probably, because, you know, why not add to their collection? But also, you have to think like a lower-end English Premier League team would look upon him, especially if they can get him for fuck all, to add him as a squad player. And that would obviously bring him a big fat wage and maybe help his chances of becoming a first-choice Scotland left-back in future when Andy Robertson eventually starts to kind of, his talents start to recede a bit as he gets older. And he did also kind of...
But Kieran Tierney just is never going to be fit again. We've kind of...
Kieran Tierney's never going to be fit.
Well, even if he does, he's not going to be fit for long. So there will be times you'll get to play.
Yeah. Yeah. And he also did his best work under Ange, so if he's still manager of Spurs at the end of the season, I don't know necessarily if he would go to Spurs, but that's at least a voice south of the border who would talk highly of him if anybody was to make the call.
Yeah, and there's also like the how much he developed tactically under Ange could be the making of him to do this type of move that you're talking about. He was a good left back who always had a good touch, and he was always quite comfortable on the ball. But Ange Postecoglou add dimensions to his game with being able to come inside, being able to add in the midfield, which turned him into like quite a modern player. And like you say, having a player who's that modern as a squad player down south, I think that would be quite something that would interest a lot of managers, because they're not, there's not millions in to come by, and someone who'd be ready to play in that quite not unusual anymore, but sort of like how the best teams play, you know, like the very progressive style, to get a player on a free who's already kind of ready-made to go into that. I think that would be quite an interesting move. But I think Celtic will want to keep him because they've noticed how hard it is to, even though they try every year to replace him, they can't replace him. Kind of like, to bring Lewis Stevenson back in here, kind of like what Hibs tried to do with Lewis Stevenson over the years.
And even if they got Alex Valley on loan from...
Apparently he's going back. Apparently the Barcelona want to bring him back already in January.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning. He's only on loan. And so that's... So even if, like, between now and the... It's... even if he sticks around for the entire season, which is what his deal was supposed to be initially, that... He's likely to go back to Barcelona, so it's like, do you want to start over again with two new left backs? There's another team we'll get to soon where it's like two players in one position. You might have to be signing in the one window, and that's a situation you don't want to get into. You want at least one of them to be somebody that you know you're getting something from. So,
yeah, and you know what you're going to get as well. Yeah.
Right, let's move on to Dundee. Who have you got?
Fucking hell, man.
There's a few of them.
Quite a gang. I think the biggest one in terms of they're not going to get money for someone they probably could have would be Lyle Cameron, of course. But there's loads. I mean, I would say there's 7 first-team players, like possibly even first 11 players who are leaving. I had this conversation with Gary before about Dundee, that it was like when they were going for Simon Murray and they were maybe trying to hold on to Luke McCowan, it did seem to me it was like, understand that this was the season to try and go for Europe. Like try and like maybe like speculate, like in terms of Dundee speculating, and just go for it because there's so much change coming. And if Docherty does well this season, like getting him in Europe, he would get poached as well. But now they're going to be in this annoying place where they might just have a fucking bang average, boring season, or worse, and then lose most of the first team players and then have to rebuild not from such a position of strength.
So I looked at it, so I kind of thought Cameron is interesting because he's not played that well this season, but I still think of the last year's deal with the amount of kind of hype that was around him and the fact that there was other teams interested. To me, it still made it very likely that he was going to leave and therefore didn't make it that interesting. I think a few of the other players, it's kind of like if Dundee want them to stay, they'll likely stay. Like, I was thinking, like, is Mo Silla, is anybody else, is somebody bigger coming in for Mo Silla? I was like, probably not, because his lack of footballing ability is probably just about Dundee level.
Yeah, and he would just move sideways, Silla.
Yeah.
You could even picture him staying in Scotland and just moving to, like, St Mirren. Like, you know, like, to plug a gap, because a player leaves, who we might mention later when we come to St Mirren, this would be the guy that they move over to plug a gap, and, like, who cares?
I wouldn't be too surprised if a club the size of Hibs, Hearts or Aberdeen comes in for him, but I think he would then have to drop down into being more of a rotation player.
Yeah.
And coming in for the away games and the tougher games where the team's not going to have as much of the ball. He's not like awful on the ball, he's just very simple on it. That's his role, is to just make sure he doesn't give it away and to take it away from the opposition as much as possible. So I went for Josh Mulligan for this.
Okay.
I thought he's just turned 22 and you're starting to feel that he's not going to live up to the hype that was surrounding him for a couple of years, especially when he was playing quite a big part in, I think it was the Dundee promotion winning side, and he was already kind of made his debut in the Premiership before then, I think I'm right in saying. But I do wonder whether he's a little bit of a victim of circumstance. He's quite a versatile player, so I don't think that Tony Docherty has really kind of nailed down his proper place in the Dundee team. Or I think that's just been the case in general ever since the championship season as well, when he got moved around a bit. And being unable to nail down what his actual position has meant he's not really been able to nail down a place in the team. And the opportunity was there this season for him to make one of those in his midfield with McCowan leaving and going to Celtic. But still, at the age of 22, and he's only recently turned 22, I still have to think there's going to be and there was rumours from bigger teams interested in him in the past. I have to think that one of them might look at him and go, right, it just wasn't a right fit for you there. We also believe that you are at your best in X position. We're going to sign you, and we're going to make it our project to play you there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's loads of... Like Jordan McGee, Portales, interesting. McGee's made a decent sort of niche late career as like a right wing back there, where he's looked pretty high quality at times. When Dundee have been at their best, his ability to come inside and all that has been pretty good. But you'd assume that they'd want to keep him. Like, why would you want to get, again, someone you can rely on? And then Portales or Tory Doors or whatever you want to fucking call the cunt.
Portales.
Why don't you, like, he might just want to not live in Scotland.
Yeah.
would be, I'm assuming, someone
he
like
is a
that.
bit of an interesting one as well, because his form, he's not really cut out as many of the mistakes I think he maybe would have hoped of a Dundee fan, because he is somebody that's quite popular, but he's also somebody that carries question marks of whether you're maybe a better team with him in the back three in terms of going forward. But are you as good defensively? I think that's a question that's not fully been answered yet, and he's been here for like 16 months.
He's a back three merchant, so it would be if a bigger club in Scotland was going to try and take him, then they would have to be specifically looking to play a back three. But who knows? There's going to be, like a few teams in here, the changes at Dundee are going to be massive next season. Hopefully they're not doing it for the Championship, Gary.
Right, how about Dundee United? Who have you got for them?
Oh, see, I found this one. Really
This is
tough
a tough
as
one.
well, because I just didn't give a shit
Yeah.
about any of them.
Well, it's that's a fair enough thing to say. It's probably you don't really give a shit about them whether Dundee United give a shit about them. Like, let's go. Like, okay, so I was saying like Ross Docherty, Kai Fotheringham, Declan Gallagher, Kevin Holt, Glenn Middleton, Louis Moult, Tony Watt.
Owen Sturton just scored his first goal, didn't he?
Yeah.
Brought him in.
Bit of interest there, but most of these guys, I mean, I think Watt's probably away, but consider he's on loan. But the rest of these guys that I mentioned, if Dundee United want them to stay, chances are they're going to stay.
Yeah.
If the terms are fine enough. The only
Babunsky,
player
maybe he was only a year deal.
that was it.
Yeah,
that was it. That was almost like a default choice because he's the one that if United want him to stay, he might not necessarily stay because he is somebody who is well travelled in his career. United are his 9th club, and all have been permanent deals, and he's only 30, so he's basically moved almost on average like every season and a bit. So a lot would depend on whether he kind of feels like this is somewhere that he's at home, and the fact that he signed a 1-year deal initially when he was coming in as a Macedonian international and coming in to be the captain was something that he didn't himself think, oh, this is definitely going to be the case. I want to remain at Tannadice for 3-4 seasons. I don't know whether he said anything to the contrary, but at the same time, even if he has, he could easily be doing what most players do in that situation and talking pish. So I think it would be interesting to see whether both parties want to extend the deal come towards the end of the campaign. And there's also a side that from United, because with the fact that I said, like, he's an international, he came in as captain, he can't be on a cheap weekly wage, I wouldn't think. And his early season performances in the league after a good Premier Sports Cup campaign didn't meet the hype. However, he has been a lot better recently. He looks more like he is getting used to Scottish football, the pace of it more. I've been impressed when I've seen him in recent games. He's starting to realise that he can't get as much time on the ball. He was a lot better in the last match at just kind of what he did when he did have possession. It felt like some of the confidence was starting to come back a bit.
Quick
And he was
turning.
playing more of the attacking game that you saw when he initially came into the team. So it's just going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on as this season progresses. Because, like I said, I just think the other ones, unless one of these guys that I mentioned just goes on an absolute tear, and you're like, where the hell did that come from?
They won't.
Are United going to be able to keep them? I mean, Glenn Middleton is maybe a possibility but Glenn Middleton's always had these wee bursts of
Surely
periods where he
everyone
looks
knows
great.
that. Yeah. The 4 weeks of Glenn Middleton. Like, I mean, just surely nobody's going to get themselves overly excited about it. Ross Docherty might be an interest. I mean, is this Ross Docherty's first season in the top flight?
Yeah, but he's quite old, so if Dundee United offer him a deal, he's surely just going to take it. And he's already getting injured again.
And I think they might keep him as because he's done all right when he's played in the top flight, and he's older, and you could probably just give him another. You could just keep giving him a year on year, you know, and he'll gobble it up.
He might leave due to the fact that he's just injury prone, and United might just cut their losses in that, and he might go back to the Championship or to like a team that has aspirations of just surviving and nothing more. And then you might be able to live with the fact that he misses half the season quite a lot of the time due to breaking down so often. Right, let's move on to the first of the two clubs quite close to our hearts, and we'll start with the JTs, the Gorgie Boys. I have Xander Clark for this one, because if you look at some of the other ones, Lord Shankland, is it that interesting? He's probably away. Barry Mackay's almost certainly away. George Grant, I would say similar. He's kind of talked recently about wanting a new deal. I think Hearts are going to have to see him start playing a lot better.
Yeah. You're going to have to start seeing what we see in the old training pitch, George.
Liam Boyce will surely be away. There's James Wilson.
Liam Boyce is surely retiring at the end of this season. Let's be honest.
James Wilson's down. I have a feeling there is an option of another year there, so I don't think that's necessarily that interesting.
The interesting one here is actually where Barry Mackay goes, I would say. Because Barry Mackay's going to leave Hearts and he's going to play for one of the other cunts, your Motherwells, your Dundee Uniteds. He'll come out and he's going to be fucking brilliant. Is what exactly
how good is he going to be in his debut season?
That's the interesting part here. And he'll go to one of the other teams in the Scottish Premiership, just below our gang's level or size or whatever, and he'll be brilliant. It's exactly what's going to happen. And
then they hopefully, just for a laugh, on my part, they'll hopefully also be duped into giving him a lengthy deal as well, where he won't kick his arse for the rest of it.
Another interesting thing is Craig. I think Hearts going to give Craig Gordon a deal. I can taste it. I can feel it. It's coming.
Well, this comes from why I picked Xander Clark, because just in general, the goalkeeper battle at Tynecastle has been very interesting this season. Personally, I think Gordon has been better at Clark at making saves you wouldn't expect the goalkeeper to make, but also I think he's made mistakes and cost Hearts goals that I don't think Xander Clark would have. Yes, the goal conceded at Easter Road being the prime example of that.
The age, you can see him.
Yeah, I, like most Hearts fans, prefer Gordon just because he's a club hero, and that loyalty doesn't die as quickly as it would with other players due to that reason. But I'm not sure how much sense it actually makes overall to continually picking the much older player than the younger one when there isn't much difference between them. And there's also, so what does Clark think about this? Is Clark annoyed by this all? Is that going to hamper his chances of staying long term? Does he want to stay long term? There was rumours in the summer that clubs in English Championship were after him, so he could be looking at that, and he could be able to leave Tynecastle easily and get his pick of some teams. His stock will, you would think, be a little bit higher than when it left St Johnstone, just purely down to the profile of the club he's leaving. And then also, then this goes back to what I said earlier, I was referring to Hearts at the time. With Gordon's age, does he look to retire? Do Hearts give him another deal? Are Hearts going into next summer needing 2 new first-team keepers? A lot up in there.
Gordon will sign a new deal and play another year, like.
I think so, aye.
Gordon's going to have to be taken out the back and told he's... Like, just like when you shoot a horse that's broke his leg. One day someone's going to take Gordon out the back.
Because he's taken out the back and told. And then you went into the horse analogy. I was like, is that what horses are? They're told with a shotgun.
They're told. And they just trot off. And they go and live on a nice farm. And everything's all right. And they just eat grass all the time and everything's great. But, yeah, I think Gordon is going to be one of those guys that's going to have to be kind of nudged into retiring. Because, I mean, if you're not retiring at 40 off the back of the injury he had, and then for him to get back in the Scotland team, it's going to have reignited what he believes he can do. You know what I mean? It'll have verified what he done. So that's probably makes him thinking he's going to 45 at least.
It's fully reignited his desire to spend zero time whatsoever with his family.
I don't know what that is. It's a joke, but it fucking sounds real.
He's never in the house. He's either playing football, he's travelling with a team that he's not even playing for, or he's travelling away to do punditry work. He's never in the house. Never in the house, that man.
Never.
Right, Hibs, Tony. Who have you got?
All of you, fuck off. Well, they're 17, so you've got to remember, this is what Malky Mackay was using to back himself up to try and get himself breathing space the second he came through the door. A new director of football comes in, rather than getting everyone excited, he's like, nah, it'll be next season that we're able to do anything because everyone's out of contract there. You ken what you're doing, Malky. You know this game better than anyone. Diminishing our expectations. But 17, I suppose... I think Martin Boyle will definitely be away. I don't see him exercising another year because he costs too much and he's become pretty shit. Let's be honest. And then, but I think maybe an interesting one, the most interesting one there, because I think everyone else will basically just be let to go, is possibly Lewis Miller. And maybe the idea of that is I could see everyone scratching their heads in the summer when Lewis Miller leaves Hibs on a free and goes to a team that pays him more money, who's higher up on the scale, despite everyone thinking he's shit, simply because another team is going to see athlete, and then
athlete, Aussie international.
Yeah, they'll see that, and I think there'll be people scratching their heads all over Scottish football, and we see this a lot about. I know Ollie Burke being the sort of most extreme example of this style of player. And what clubs are willing to do because he can run in a straight line. And so I say Lewis Miller might be the weird one where Hibs even possibly offer him a new deal, or he leaves Hibs to go to a team where people are like, well, that's arguably better than Hibs in terms of money and stature.
He's going to start scoring goals regularly in the Bundesliga.
I mean, Lewis Miller, yeah, let's keep an eye on him, everyone. There's my shout for this.
Oh, to be fair, is Oliver Burke started scoring goals regularly, or has he just scored a goal?
No, he scored his first goal in 1 year.
Oh, it was his first goal? Sorry, I think I was. We put on a View for the Terrace. The episode just passed, but I was still making food when you were talking about.
Yeah, it was his first
Ollie
year.
Buck, so
First year, he scored his goal, the first goal in a year, and they put on the Proclaimers for him doing it.
Well, I did actually go for Martin Boyle because I didn't know about the. I didn't know about the extension clause that
I'm pretty sure there's an option on Boyle that I'm assuming if he's on the money if he's on whatever the 5 figures that people say he's on, and we don't know what's true or not, but if he's on anywhere near that reported, I can't see him. Why would you? You'd be mad.
I know, but what would be interesting is whether like Hibs say, right, we're not giving you that contract, and you can have a look around, but whether they come to some sort of arrangement.
And like, he comes back for $4,000 a week.
Because you'd have to be somebody who's now essentially a squad player. That would have to be his wage, and that is about $4,000 a week for somebody with his experience to do that type of job. And then there's just a lot of kind of questions that then go around with that. Is that still too much for somebody his age with his output this season? You're saying yes. Is it certainly? Would he be happy with just taking a 1-year deal? Because you have to think with his production going down as much as it did, the Hibs would be daft to give him anything else. Would Boyle be happy with just that 1-year deal? Is there other options out there? Can he get a bigger pay packet if he goes? Because being a regular in the Aussie national team,
the A-League is screaming him, isn't it? Really
does open that up a bit. But having moved away from home before, not lasted very long, and come back, would he be willing to do it again? I'm
sorry, I don't think we're going to be comparing moving to Saudi Arabia to moving to Australia. They're like, what? Oh no, I can't hack it. He can go right out in Australia, which you'll be fine with.
I think it's more of his wife and child, because obviously did they follow up with Saudi Arabia? That's maybe a bit of a different story, but would they be happy to go to Australia?
Yeah,
it's even further away.
Yeah, but they've got, obviously she's still at Hibs.
Yeah.
His wife, but what's the women's football scene like in the A-League? There's a question you're not going to be able to answer.
No, not at all. But I suppose it's just where they actually want to live that far away. I mean, Australia's a good place for a lot of people to live, but I mean, I'd never live in Australia unless it just got that shit here that you just kind of had to, which I suppose is a possibility in the future.
If I was thinking about Martin Boyle, see if there's a, and I would assume there is, because just sports so highly thought of in Australia in general, and I know women's sports normally pushed quite a lot in Australia in general. I would assume there's options there, and for Boyle, if you're an Aussie international, he's not going to want to quit that anytime soon with the opportunities that comes being there. Then that might extend your career a bit because you take away a lot of the travel, and then because you're a big name over there, there's also the punditry ideas that come out the back of that in the A-League, off the back of that, or coaching opportunities that are arguably maybe more than he would even get here. And lifestyle over there is better. There's no doubt about that. I would say you'd be, as long as, as I said, that he's missed, because I know his wife's career is important in the relationship. You can tell it is because of what's happened previously. If that was an option for them, because I would say there's more longevity in his career over there. There's probably more money. There's more international. He'll be able to do that for longer. And like I said, after the aftermath of his career, I think would be better served over there as well. Right,
let's move on to Killie. I've got Robbie Dees.
Oh, okay. Okie dokie then.
So I'll go for this and you can chuck out anybody else.
I mean, obviously got Dan Armstrong being the most, but again, the idea is he'll just leave. So they're like, what's it? Big Kyle Vassell.
He'll probably, I could just imagine if Killie want him to stay, they'll keep him. He's a bit old to go anywhere else at this stage of his career for like more money, you would think. Maybe there'll be somebody in England who would, at a higher level than he would have got before his Killie spell, could maybe tempt him. But I don't know. I would imagine that Vassell will stay.
He's got Hearts backup striker written all over him at some point.
Nah, he's a bit too old. He'll not fit into the algorithm.
Okay.
There'll be young players that want to sell on for profits, and that certainly does not fit Kyle Vassell, that description. So yeah, Dees is interesting because 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure whether he's got he kind of screams somebody that might have a year option, but I'm not sure about that. But anyway, 24 years old. He's never. It kind of feels like, despite the fact he's well thought of and has played well for Killie, that he's never really properly assured of his place in the team. He's probably is now for the first time in his Killie career, just because of the options they've had at centre back. since he signed for them before the start of last season.
Yeah.
Because then I think they signed him and then got Finlay back, and it was kind of like, okay, now
Dees was there on loan before that as well, was he not?
Was he there? No, wait, hang on. I thought they just got him from... No, you're thinking of Mayo.
I'm making a Mayo, yeah.
Dees just came straight for Inverness. Yeah. But they had Mayo. So they had Mayo, they had Joe Wright there already, and Joe Wright then played a lot better last season, and I think they expected him to. And you had Finlay, and Finlay was a left-sided centre-back, and so was Dees, and so it kind of pushed Dees at the side quite a lot in the first half of the campaign. And then even when he was getting games sometimes, he was sometimes being shifted around, being either on the left of the three in the centre of the three, but even sometimes being used at left-back, because if Corey Ndaba was out last year, they didn't have any proper decent depth behind him. So you kind of had to turn to Dees in those positions. So he's been moved around, and it kind of feels like he's just not really got the chance to properly assert himself in the Kelly team. However, that will be coming now. So he's going to get the opportunity. Finlay's out for a long time. I mean, he did play recently at left back because Ndaba was being played at centre back against Celtic with kind of like a free role license to break forward from centre half. How long that experiment lasts will be interesting, but if it doesn't last very long, and my suspicion is that it won't, like it'll be something that teams will eventually adjust to and try to exploit in the situations when Ndaba goes forward, and they might have to move things around again. Then Dees will just be at centre half and have a proper run there, and that could mean Tim playing. I would imagine Kelly would want to keep him anyway, want to keep him around, but it depends on what his status is within the squad. Does at the end of this run he then see himself as a proper first team regular and demands to be either paid that much or just given a similar contract, but given the insurances that when Finlay returns he'll be in the team regardless? Does he go somewhere else where he gets those assurances, or also does he play well enough that Kelly can't keep him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bobby Wales, another one I'd be interested to see how that one goes. Now that he's starting to show sparks of life. Joe Wright as well. Yeah.
There's a couple of these young players that are like, it's interesting because you thought they would have been given like year extensions.
Yeah, you think if you're not going to send them on loan and you're going to keep them and actually use them in games like Bobby Wales, sure, the idea is, well, yeah, let's give him at least another year to make sure that he does develop in this time, because we obviously rate him enough that we don't want him to leave on loan, then maybe give him another year in advance of this, but who knows.
I've checked out Dees. He doesn't, according to the Kelly article that when he was signed, he doesn't have any sort of option for another year, so he will be free to leave in the summer and free to talk to clubs in January. But Tony, let's go to another team with quite a lot of players available and quite a lot of kind of, I'm not sure how interested many of these are. Motherwell.
I suppose, but again, it's like we've got the same issue again like we had on the other ones earlier, Dundee United. If they want to keep any of these guys, I imagine they'll just be able to. So it'll all be down to them. How much of a rebuild do you want to make? Paul McGinn, maybe a bad time for him to pick up. He's got quite a serious injury, is he not? And he was sort of the captain. So it's like now it's a terrible time to get an injury at his age when you're a captain of a team. And now you're caught in that. Now they're going to be wondering, well, how is he going to come back from that injury? And then if he was any club that might have been thinking, we'll take Paul McGinn on for a year or two, they might be like, nah, scratch that, we'll move over now. So it's like kind of like a shit position for him to be in as an individual. I suppose maybe an interesting one is Drakovsky. Just because I can never decide, like they seem to never be able to decide where his role is and like how much they want him, how good he is. They always feel like they play kind of better when he's in there. I don't know, it's just my perception of it. So would they not think maybe we can get another year or two out of him to keep seeing how he develops once he's settled, especially if they're going to be losing like Slattery and people like that? It's just like Drakovsky seems like if you're going to lose Slattery and Halliday, surely you'd want to keep Drakovsky because he's a bit younger. You think there's maybe a slightly higher ceiling for this period of time being at Motherwell. He's an international player. You don't know how that'll go. So maybe you keep Drakovsky on a little bit further.
It's interesting, yeah. Guys like Slattery, still injured, still to come back. Halliday, Drakovsky, all these centre midfielders, like, how many of them end up staying because Lenny Miller goes and you just don't want too much upheaval? Because if Lenny Miller was a player that you could build your team around for the next few years and he wasn't going to have all this interest coming from outside and just a likelihood that you're going to receive an offer of £4 or £5 million and you're just going to have to say yes to that because you're a club of Motherwell size. Like, if he was somebody that you could, that wasn't all that, and you have faith he could stick around for 2-3 years, then you would maybe look at guys like that and go, okay, we can maybe do better around him. But kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Do you want so much upheaval? Probably not. I went for something left field. I went for Moses Abiy because he's a funny player. And he scored 6 goals in 21 appearances in the Scottish top flight. And I didn't have time to look up his goals to minutes ratio, but I can imagine it's pretty good because he doesn't really start many games.
Yeah.
He's very much a super sub in the kind of truest sense. And with squads being able to carry 9 players on the bench these days, is that something that Motherwell would want to stick around? But he's also not very good. So do you want to limit yourself by having somebody in your books who's taken up a first team wage who can only really be used for these scenarios? I mean, chasing a goal late in a game is a scenario that you feel that you're in very often. So is it worth that? Just keeping him around, even though you know that he's not really good enough to ever start games. He's only really good enough to come off and feed around scraps in the penalty area when you're throwing loads of crosses and passes into the box in the dying embers of a game.
Well, Kettlewell likes having fucking millions of forwards.
He does.
So the answer probably is yes. He does think it's worth it.
Right, let's move on to Rangers.
This is a funny one. The only team that doesn't have fucking shitloads of players out of contract, and they are the most desperate to offload half their team.
Well, actually, you say that, but that's why I've gone for Tom Lawrence, because I think he is somebody that, so he's turned 31 this season.
The reason you went for Tom Lawrence is the only player there that's a first team player that isn't 36 like Balogun. you don't try and play this cool side. Oh, I went for Lawrence. He's the only fucking option, Craig. Fucking Zach Lovelace, Alex Lowry. Oh yeah, well, you're going to make a justification of them keeping them, aren't you? It's him because he's the only one who plays in the first team, Craig. It's very simple.
How dare you? How dare you? Pull my trousers down and show my pants in front of all the listeners.
You tried to play this. Well, I've actually went for this left field. It's the only fucking field or option.
I didn't say he was left field. I just think he is. Even though he's the only interesting choice, I do think there is something interesting about it, because what you were saying, Rangers want all these guys to be out of contract so they can get rid of them and bring in new players. But as we know, Rangers have just had that 17 million loss. They're going to spend money because they always spend money, and there's always,
regardless if it's the right idea or not.
Exactly, and that's just not the way football works. If clubs get a big loss, they don't just bank the season ticket for the money for the next season and go, okay, we're not spending it on anything.
Certainly not Rangers. Certainly not.
They spend some of it, but they're still going to have to be a bit tighter with the purse strings than they were, for instance, the summer before last, when Michael Beale signed all those crap forwards for a ridiculous amount of money. So I think in many years gone by, they would look at Lawrence and be like, right, turns 31 this season. He's fairly injury prone, and he's not at the standard to where Rangers want to. He's not at the standard where Rangers aspire to be. So you think typically that would be right. Okay, thanks for your efforts, out the door. But it's the lack of options. It's the lack of spend. They're going to have to bring in somebody to replace him, which makes it to be a bit more interesting, because he still
shoots outside the box, just like you're saying about Moses. This guy will always be handy. Lawrence will always be a handy guy to have around.
Yes, and do you have him to... I mean, is he going to help you win any games against Celtic? Probably not, but is he going to help you win many games in the Scottish Premiership? Probably yes, if he stays fit.
Especially if you're going to insist on only winning 1-0 against everyone. You definitely need a player like that.
But a further wrinkle to it is that the side Bajrami, he is on a permanent deal. He is a number 10 who's been asked to play it wide at this point in time. If they sign another left winger, or if Cortez comes back in following his latest injury issues and manages to establish himself.
Guys just he still plays me there for.
Manages to establish himself, and Ravi Matondo ever comes good for more than 50 minutes at a time. I know.
This world sounds great.
These are a lot of ifs, but if these things happen, then do they want to move Bajrami inside fully and for him to be their proper number 10? And then where does that leave Lawrence? So that's the interesting wrinkle there.
Thank you.
The likelihood is they offer him a new contract because they've got fuck all else. So
yeah,
May as well keep somebody.
3 teams to go, Fowler.
Yes, I think we'll be able to fit this all in time. Right. Ross County. This was difficult, this one.
So many guys again. So many fucking guys again. The exact same. They would all hang around if offered a contract. Victor Luturi. Come back to me. Don't leave me. I'm trying to prove me right at some point. Jordan White, I suppose, quite an interesting one that they would want to keep him. But Luturi, I do think is interesting because he has shown young coming from a strange country and he's got a bit of ability and people didn't fancy him. He came for fuck all. It's like basically like an amateur coming in and he managed to get up to speed and he looked pretty handy and he's got a lot of the physical attributes you would want for a midfielder here. But he just didn't develop again. He needed to develop like guy for his position. He developed like 3 times over to get to the point where he like runs the show for there, and that hasn't quite happened. And he's ended up just becoming like a squad player at Ross County. So I feel like they might just offer him a new deal because he's still young.
Oh, I don't know about that. He's been pretty crap this season.
He has been crap. They were like putting him, but they randomly put him at like number 10 in that, and I just don't understand what's happening. Yeah, Jordan White is quite an interesting one. You just feel like a big Huddy strike like that. There's always room for a Huddy strike like that at some club in the Scottish top flight because he can do stuff. He can, and he'll score against Rangers.
Yes, but unfortunately he does turn, and this is what makes it a little bit more interesting. He turns, I had this earlier, 30, it's 33 before the end of the season. He turns 33 in February.
There's a player, funnily enough, I don't think I've ever heard his name and his age ever in my life. I think that's the first time. I've never heard. Normally it's like 30-year-old striker or something. You'll hear a comment there. They're just thinking, when you were about to tell me his age, I was like, I have no idea how old Jordan White is. You could have told me anything there. And I went, all right, cool, fair enough.
I think it's because he's got a type of, his type of game, his type of playing style is almost it's almost ageless.
Yeah, it is. And it's got sort of like, he could be about 50 other guys. And they're just interchangeable cast that I've seen over my lifetime watching strikers in Scottish football.
Just stand, jump, and head.
Yeah.
And do Ross County want to hang on to that for another season? Does County want to take the plunge and go with something completely different? You would think of the stay up. Yeah.
Oh, if they go down, you're definitely keeping Jordan White.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely are. Definitely.
Right. Penultimate team, St Johnstone. I thought there was one clear standout for this one, even though they have 21 players out of contract next summer.
It's got to be Big Benji.
Ah, yes. Big
Benji Kimpioka.
Yeah. Who has been so
electric this season, let's be honest. He's been brilliant.
He's maybe recent last couple of performances maybe not been as good, but over the course been very, very impressive this season. He showed something last campaign, but he's looked a lot sharper, a lot fitter. You can see the talent that's given him such a great pedigree he's got, having played for Sunderland, having played for a top team in Sweden, and you just think it feels likely that he's going to go at the end of the season if he can maintain around the levels of form that he's showed so far this campaign. But at the same time, he's not someone that's played a whole lot of football in his career because of being at these bigger clubs who he wasn't quite able to break through at. So, and he's never really been properly settled as a result. So it's kind of the thing where maybe you want to take a bit of, if you're an agent, you maybe want to take a bit of short-term pain for long-term gain. And say
I don't know if that's that game. I don't think the agent game really leads into that a lot.
Well, sometimes you can say to a player, like, if you really want to reach your potential, maybe stay here for one more season and show you can take the step
score
up.
like 20. Yeah.
Yeah, aye. Be the top goal scorer in this league, or be up there. Like, be the top goal scorer for a player who doesn't play for Celtic or Rangers.
Maybe then you make a slightly better move in the same country.
Yes.
That's his point. Because I think you'll get, I think Hibs, Hearts or Aberdeen, Dundee United or Kilmarnock definitely will be sniffing around Kimpioka. Definitely.
Yes, at this point in time. But can you stay, or do you go somewhere else in the league, or do you just stay at St Johnstone and take the opportunity to try and go
It's just so hard to be the top goal scorer at St Johnstone.
Yeah,
so
I suppose
even under Valakari, maybe you could be the top goal scorer and get relegated. I mean, that's possible.
I suppose you're right. The best move would probably be to say, like, just stay in Scottish football. You seem to suit this. Stay in Scottish football for a bit longer. Try and move up a level if somebody interested within the same league.
Because you've got a free move, like you don't have to worry about transfer fee. So you can just make a one step up. Where you don't have to worry, and like teams that will play slightly more expansively will want to attack a bit more than maybe. Even though, I mean, now I'm talking like I'm forgetting that Valakari St Johnstone manager. They play fucking mad football now.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe stay there.
Yeah. So like if Valakari's it, but as I said, the issue might be that you'll be playing in the Championship. That is,
that's
because the vibes I'm getting with Valakari is that. He's going to be a player manager who wants to play this style and won't change it regardless. Pragmatism is not part of his lifestyle. So I feel like he'll be doing this match football regardless of how badly St Johnstone are doing at any point. So it could work one of two ways.
I think it'll work if he manages to reshape that defence and goalkeeper situation before now and the end of the season and to make it a lot more competent.
All it has to be is okay, because I think they are good enough going forward that as long as the defence is passable, it should get them 9th in the league or something like that.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to our final team, and that is, of course, St Mirren. Who do you have for the buddies, Tony?
I had two. Well, there's 3 players that I thought were interesting. I'll go for Olusanyas, though, because again, it's just so interesting to see. It's just his career's taken off at like a rate of knots. It's just hard to comprehend. And it's just like, will he just keep on thinking I can keep climbing? And he's just looked so much of a Scottish Premiership striker this season. Like, he's such a nightmare. And he's scrappy, but he's also quick. He can buy a yard. He's quite good at finishing. He's decent one-on-one. You feel like another club in Scotland might want him, and just with the momentum in his career, he might be up for just taking that leap constantly. Like once you're in this momentum in your career, and just take that jump again. But I'm assuming St Mirren will want to keep him.
That was one of the ones where I was like, I think St Mirren will want to keep him, but whether he would want to stay, I'd be interested, because again, it's one of those ones that's like, if both sides wanted it to happen, why has it not happened by now? Kind of thing, because it's like, we're in mid-November and he's clearly been their best attacking player certainly since August. So it's been a while now. So you would have thought they might have got it done before then, but maybe they're paying too many legal fees.
I've got other things to worry about. But that, like I was saying, if you've gone from not getting your game for the worst team in the Championship within 2 years being the top striker at a top 6 team who was in Europe this season, you might just keep wanting to climb. You might just this momentum, because it could stop at any time. I know what the other side of the coin is, and I don't want to go to it. So I might, if an option comes to move to Hibs or Kilmarnock, even just bigger clubs, or like a team down south, because the sort of pest strikers always sad. If you running with 4 strikers, one of them being a pest is normally something that you want to have in 4 of them. That the option might just be there, and he just keep on climbing. Just keep on climbing as it's going, because eventually it'll stop, because you can't be that good all of a sudden. You just can't be.
Yeah. And you have, and now as well, he's somebody that I think throughout most of his career has played at like a non-league level before he moved up. Where was he? AFC Wimbledon. That was when he came through the ranks, and then he played for a bunch of teams that are less well known than AFC Wimbledon, and ended up at Middlesbrough, then St Mirren. Still, he couldn't have had many. I forgot he was at Middlesbrough before he went to. That was a weird one.
Bizarre.
Before he went to St Mirren. But he's going to be somebody that he's played a lot of football in places where he wouldn't have been paid really much money at all.
So he's going to keep on taking it.
So he might see it. 27 years old. It's a short career. Just make what he can. He's recently turned 27 as well. So again, right there, another player right there in their prime years. Just before we finish, one more player I want to chuck out for St Mirren. I had Caelan Boyd-Munce.
Boydie, I thought it would be. Him and Richard Taylor were the other ones I was slightly interested in.
I think Taylor's enough of a kind of, right now, a sweet spot where if him and St Mirren want to get a deal done, they will. Caelan Boyd-Munce is interesting because he was up there with St Mirren's best players
last season.
yeah, if not their best player, like overall. And there was a bit of interest in him, or at least there was a bit of paper talk of interest in him in the summer, and he didn't go. And then this year he struggled quite a bit. Like he picked up a knock in Europe that didn't seem to go away, seemed to impact his performances because it kind of happened during that spell where the games were coming thick and fast. And I think that disrupted them a bit. And then St Mirren themselves weren't that great for a period afterwards.
And you felt that St Mirren were even changing their style to fit in with Boyd Muntz to make him better. I thought that's how much his ceiling was, is that even Robinson was thinking, maybe I don't just have to batter the shit out of everyone. Maybe I can pass to him.
But now now he's struggling to get a game. He's in the last 5 matches, he's only played 25 minutes. And against Hibs, he wasn't even in the squad. I couldn't see anything.
A bit of an injury, yeah.
Yeah, to say if he was injured or not. You would have thought so. You wouldn't think he would have been bombed it entirely, but still, 25 minutes across 5 matches shows that he's kind of dropped in the pecking order quite a bit. And St Mirren have got their identity back. So on the one hand, it's a bad thing for him because it's got their identity back where they've got Calvin Phillips and Mark O'Hara in the midfield, two very different footballers to Boyd Muntz. But also, if St Mirren get their identity back and then can reintroduce him, and then that might bring out the best of them again, because he was able to play in that kind of that style of team last year. He was a bit of poise and had all the runners about him. And I think Kilty and McMenamin coming back might help that because they're two hard-working players as well further forward. And Robinson, as he did in the game against Hibs, will maybe go back to the 3-4-3 because I think a lot of this campaign they've been playing more of a 3-5-2 because they just haven't really had, and they've changed to a back four on occasion as well, because they just haven't had the players that they had to make last season's system work. But now these players are back fit, back in form, and that might mean that Boyd Muntz is able to fit back in. And if he does, recapture his form, what does that mean for his future? Because at present, you're actually thinking like maybe St Mirren won't even offer him a deal. So
you'll go and replace Halliday or some cunt else at Motherwell. Simple. Right, there we go. There we go.
Right, Tony. That'll do us. Thank you very much for joining me.
No, my pleasure.
And thank you to everybody for listening and your continued support of the podcast. I already gave the Patreon plug at the start, so I don't need to do it now. Enjoy your football. Take care of yourself. Be respectful. All the rest. Goodbye.